Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a 2022 movie, and I've seen about 20 movies from 2022 so far, and I think about 4 or 5 of them are pretty good. And I'll add this one to the list. And this is the Korean film Decision to Leave, and it's directed by Park Chan-Wook. His first feature film in about 6 years, and when it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival last spring. Park won the Best Director Award. And it starts out very ordinarily as a police procedural. The main character is the lead homicide detective in a very busy Busan police station. He is very well respected. He's a very orderly man, unemotional. He is known to be indefatigable in his pursuit of criminals, and the film opens with the finding of a dead man is found at the foot of a very steep mountain. He appears to be an experienced climber. So what the investigation is centered on is whether it's accident, suicide, murder. So when they tell the wife, now the man is like 60, the woman's in her 30s, and she's beautiful, but she shows no remorse when she's told of what has happened to her husband. And so that sets up a red flag. She immediately becomes a suspect. So this lead detective is known for his stakeouts, and he does indeed stake out the apartment. He's insomniac. He can't, instead of sleeping, he likes to do stakeouts. And he also tails her in her car. So we get very much a sense of, in this sense, of Vertigo. This is a movie that is going to remind you very often of Vertigo. And as he gets more involved with her in interrogations, he falls in love with her. And he's a prime candidate to fall in love with a mysterious and have a mysterious woman and have a romance, because he has a weekend marriage. He's been married for 16 years. The joy of it seems to have disappeared. His wife is a scientist, and she works at a nuclear plant far away from Busan, far enough away that they can only see each other on weekends. But not only is she a scientist, she's a scientific nerd. She peppers her conversations with statistics, and she even gives them the percentage of weekend marriages, that don't end in divorce. So he's obviously a little bit bored with her rather mundane conversations, but he does seem to have affection for her. So in Park's movies, there's an abstract quality to his narrative, and gradually it becomes more and more abstract and rather dream-like. So when he's on a stakeout, he imagines himself. We see him in the apartment with this suspect, and as he gradually falls in love with her. And so it's very much a story of romantic obsession. And one element that I want to point out is its very good use of cell phones and smart watches. The technology here is well integrated into the suspense of the movie, into the investigation. Oftentimes in suspense films, the cell phone is like the bane of suspense, because everybody can just take out their phone. They don't have to find a phone booth. They can just take out their phone, and then they have to put in, oh, I forgot to charge my phone, or etc. But not here. This is a really good use of how these, especially the cell phone, how it's investigated, but also in communication, because this woman that he has fallen in love with, this suspect in the murder of her husband, she is Chinese. She knows Korean, but there are moments when she doesn't feel like she can express herself as well as she could in Chinese. So she speaks into a translation app, speaks in Chinese, and then has it translated so that the detective can hear the Korean version of what she wants to say. So I thought that's very effective as far as the kind of the theme of understanding other people, how words come into play with that. But it is a neo-noir, despite its rather offbeat narrative. Story of romantic despair, the femme fatale who puts our hero through an ordeal. It's definitely his dignity is to be shattered. His dignity is immense, and it's liable to be shattered. So this ordeal that he goes through, a la Vertigo, does he go through it once, or will he go through it yet again? Now, the two actors, the main two actors, the detective played by Park Hae-il, is very good at portraying this kind of buttoned up nature. You might think at times maybe it's too much, maybe he's too reserved, he doesn't show his emotions. But I found it very effective, and you might know him from other movies. He was in Memories of Murder. I think he was the chief suspect in that film. He's also in The Host. He's in Hanson, a big budget Chinese historical movie currently. The actress playing the femme fatale is played by Tang Wei, and she is absolutely great in this film. And she is she might be known to you for her performance in Less Caution from Ang Lee, a film that the film got into a great deal of trouble with the Chinese government, and Tang Wei herself was in deep trouble for that film. And she's in Black Hat, Michael Mann's Black Hat, which recently has been announced as coming out in 4K in a few weeks. I had no intention of getting it, but now I think I might. And as I said, this is Park Chan-Wook's first film in 6 years. His last film, The Handmaiden, I think is might be my favorite Park Chan-Wook film. And it's but again, I would suppose his revenge trilogy from the early 2000s, Old Boy and the Lady Vengeance series, the cinema of cruelty, revenge plots that I think established Park Chan-Wook as far as gaining a international audience, and it's probably his for most fans of his movies, those are the films that are probably their favorite. Now, you can watch Decision to Leave on Mubi, the MUBI, which is a streaming service, and they put out this film. This is actually a movie film release, and I think they've done a couple of others that they have the rights to. So I could have gotten a free 7-day subscription, I think, to Mubi to see this, to see Decision to Leave, but I wanted to there are some supplements here. There are some brief interviews with Park Chan-Wook and featurettes. But the main supplement here is an interview that he gave last fall at the New York Film Festival, where Decision to Leave played at the New York Film Festival. So he has an interview, on stage type interview. And he is absolutely great, he's a great interview. He takes the questions very seriously. You see him looking up in the air and looking up, like in contemplative mode, and he's very generous in his responses. And there were a couple of things that I thought were really interesting in his responses, and one is his description of his films as comedies. And you might not think of Park Chan-Wook's films as comedies, but there are always comic elements within them. Now, he says that when somebody comes up to him and says, Director Park, I've seen such and such a movie and I really enjoyed it. He says, my first response to that is, did the audience laugh? He's just amazed that audiences don't laugh at his films because he has designed them as comedies. But he also understands that he creates very uncomfortable scenes that can be kind of horrific, yet you have an impulse to laugh at them, and then you wonder, is it appropriate to laugh at these scenes? And he knows too that he has a big international audience. So when he designs the comic moments in his films, he wants to design them in ways that everybody will understand them. But he says every once in a while he puts in something that only a Korean audience would get the references. But he says no, not to worry. The Korean audiences don't laugh at my movies either. And then and it's an interesting reading. When I went back to see Decision to Leave, you can see these comic moments, but you can see the whole design of the movie really is, despite its tragedy, it also has this comic overtones to it. But the other question that he responded to that I thought was so interesting in his response was, he was asked about his influences. The film is, he says, the question is, you've often talked about your film influences, but you also talk about your influences from literature. And what is the biggest influence on your films or literature? So, and Park Chan-Wook thanks, he says, oh, thank you so much for asking me this question. And his response is great, because he said that growing up, he loved to read crime fiction, Martin Beck novels, and in fact, I haven't talked about the look of this film, which is fantastic production design and cinematography and costumes. But anyway, one of the tables in his room, in his apartment, is a very neatly stacked 10 Martin Beck mysteries. And then he goes into the other literary influences, and he says, I don't really watch that many films anymore, and I get my inspiration from literature. And he mentions Dostoevsky, but he also mentions Kafka. And this is a very interesting influence, because Kafka put his characters in these kind of bizarre, nightmarish situations that seem real, but the protagonist can't understand exactly what he is going through. But also, when Kafka would read his stories to his friends, while he was reading, he would be laughing uproariously. He thought he too was writing comedies. The other influence that he mentioned that struck me was Balzac. I've been reading a lot of Balzac in my retirement years, and of course he wrote 90 plus novel stories. I've only read about a third of them, but the all-encompassing title of his work is called The Human Comedy. And boy, I never considered this the Balzac influence on Park Chan-Wook. Now I got to go back and look at all the films available to him to see this, to read these films, not just as comedies, but as influenced by Kafka and of Balzac. So another really good film from 2022. I've done videos on Tar, Banshees of Inisherin, The Fabelmans. I'm going to add Triangle of Sadness to that. I saw it in the movies recently, and that will be coming out from Criterion in 4K in a few weeks. So tentatively speaking, I hope to make a video on that. But I'm going to put this as one of the top 5 films so far. I still got a long list of films yet to see from last year, but definitely Decision to Leave is quickly joined my favorites from last year. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.